miserable.
We are live. This is the Miserable Podcast, episode 4.
Quattro.
Episode 4 of question mark. Maybe 4. Sitting here today with Phil Keys to my left.
What up?
I didn't know if you were going to say anything or not. So I think you didn't know if I was going to pause. It was like a nod and then silence. What up? And then we got Paulie Pie Howard on my right.
You're just like now attributing this nickname, which is my nickname, to
Right. Ever since mini golf. No.
full golf.
It was a par 3 course.
Large golf.
Large golf. Not even like regular golf. Everything was enlarged. Yeah. So it was just an easier way to write Paulie on a golf
it was
scorecard.
P, my initial, because there was another Paul. So it was P and then P-I-E.
Yeah.
Paul E.
Just disrespected the AUL.
Yeah. Just the most valuable part of my name.
Yeah. So here we are, episode 4, talking about absolutely nothing for the first minute.
And 45 seconds.
That's true. Thank you, Father Time. But we are going to have a discussion today, which we had just decided on right before we pressed record. Actually, while we were still discussing exactly what we were doing, I think Polly hit record. So this is very fresh topic for us. This is very fresh topic for us.
Things are going great so
Yeah,
far.
so
as you can tell.
so far it's a hit. But we wanted to talk about today, after following up on episode 3, which was what is success. If you haven't listened to episode 3 yet, please go back and listen to episode 3. You get to hear an amazing story from Phil and his family, and kind of talking about what is success and how the success of his family really, really started in the foundation that his mother laid for him and his brothers and sisters and now grandkids and everybody else. So incredible story. If you haven't listened to episode 3, please go listen to that. But kind of coming off of that conversation, I think we could go directly into kind of the flip side of success and not failure so much, because that's a big topic that I think we'll address at some point. What is failure even, we could have a similar conversation we had in episode 3 about what is even success. But I think what we just discussed would be a good topic is dealing with disappointment, because I don't see disappointment as failure necessarily. And we'll get into some of that. But man, I have experienced my fair share of disappointment in life, as I'm sure you two have, and everybody listening. I guess the simple way to put disappointment is just expectations not being met. Lost opportunities, and things like that. So first of all, let's dig into that really quick. As the basis for the conversation, the first thing I think is expectations not being met. That's disappointment, where you have a good thing that you're waiting on or depending on or hoping for, and that thing never happens. That's kind of how I looked at it. And what did you just say?
Missed opportunity?
Like a missed opportunity? You want to expand on that? Like,
sure. I mean, get closer to the microphone. I think the first thing that comes to mind when I think about missed opportunity, I don't necessarily think of I think there's a couple ways that could happen. I think maybe inaction is one of the obvious ones, and what people think of the most when they think of missed opportunities. It's like, oh, there was a door for an opportunity that was open and I didn't do X, Y, Z. So I missed that chance. I didn't send that email. I didn't call that person. I didn't if you're thinking in the context of the work that I do, some work that you do, sometimes we get leads for a job. Someone emails us and they're like, hey, I want to do this. And it could be a smaller opportunity, a smaller job, so to speak, or something that could lead to something large. So that's like the inaction approach. But I think there's also like things that are outside of our control, things that seem to be opportunities that we showed up, we did our part, but it just wasn't supposed to happen or wasn't a right fit. And I think of this is what I was thinking of. I think of when I first moved here, I had several potential opportunities to make an income. One of those was working. I made a with minimal effort. I made a connection with a real estate photographer who does really good work in this area, and I googled real estate photography in Northern Virginia, and he was one of the first ones on the list. And I called him, and I said, "Hey, I'm moving here. I have this experience. I don't know if you have a need for help." And he was like, "Actually, yeah." So it was something that like came up out of nowhere, without really trying and seeking, and it just didn't. We didn't mesh well as working together. That was one thing that I consider a missed opportunity, not because it necessarily would have lasted forever, but it just
Why? Why was that a missed opportunity?
I think
Just because it didn't work out?
yeah, I mean,
Could you control how everything kind of?
not everything, no. So part of it was I'm trying not to get too deep into it, but there was some contracts and things that he had brought up, and as an independent contractor, I was carrying a lot of personal and financial liability, and I didn't feel very protected at all. So when I brought that up, the conversation didn't go positively. I just said, "Hey, like, can we revisit some of these aspects of this contract? I feel like if we adjusted some things or took some things out, it make it a little bit more. I'd be a little bit more confident because, especially at the situation, I had just been laid off, so I was living off of,
You're trying to protect yourself,
right. I was living off of saved income, and I was getting into, I just moved, and so I was like, I just would like a little bit more protection in this situation. And he took it very, very personally. He was very personally offended by it. So it seemed. He was like, "Oh well, I wrote these contracts with a lawyer, and we went through all this." And he was like, "If you want to do it," he said, "you can hire a lawyer. It's going to be expensive. It's probably not worth your time." And I was like, I mean,
Well, let me ask you something just with that little bit of backstory. Was it a disappointment because you didn't get it, or was it a disappointment because it wasn't what you were expecting?
a little bit of both. Mostly that. I was looking at it as a way to make an income, but more so as a way to learn. Because I do real estate photography, but I am only at a certain like skill level, professionally and technically. And I was seeing here's an opportunity to kind of carry me over to give me a little basis of income, but also an opportunity to learn from someone who's a professional in their field. So when it didn't work out, I was more disappointed in that sense that here's an opportunity for me to have learned something,
Right.
both business wise and technical wise, that I don't have that chance anymore. I had, sorry, you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, let me ask with your definition, like the expectations not being met, the missed opportunities or whatever. Do you have a definite? Before we get too deep into the examples, like, do you have a definition different from that? Or?
No, pretty much the same. But I lean more towards at missed opportunities. I normally don't put too much faith in other people for them to disappoint me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't put too much on people too much expectation on a person for them to disappoint me. It's typically after I like walk away from something. It's like, man, I could have done that, or I could have approach that better.
Things you could have done
Right,
differently. Yeah.
right. So it's all. I kind of got this saying, man. Control the things that you can control.
Yeah.
All right. And one of the things that I can control is me and how I take care of things and how I kind of handle things and how I kind of take advantage of the moments while I'm there. If it passed and I didn't, that's just something for me to learn from. Like, you know what, next time, or if that opportunity presents itself again, handle it, in a different way, a different manner.
Yeah.
So as far as like, being disappointed because somebody was supposed to do something and they didn't, I never give people.
Do you think you generally are pretty cynical? Like you just assume that people aren't gonna do what it is that you think they should, or I don't know how to say it. Like, are you just saying I just don't depend on other people?
I try my best not to.
Right.
At all. Like, so
it's like at work, you got coworkers. If you go in every day expecting everybody to do exactly what they said they would do or should do, you're just going to be mad every day.
Exactly.
So you just got to go into, that's kind of what you're saying is like, you just go into things like whatever it is, I'm just going to go for it.
Right.
You're not expecting people to disappoint you though.
No.
You're just removing expectation.
I think if you put that expectation on people, I think that's a lot of pressure for them, unknown pressure for them.
Right, yeah.
And they're going to fail you all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So being that I don't want that failure or just to happen, I just
rather do it
I just
yourself,
expect the less, bro. Like people not going to come through for you.
If people show up, they do the thing, then good.
If they show up, like if they do it and if they come through,
Okay.
That's the icing on the cake.
So we're talking about disappointment in people. And like one of the things that I wrote down where you were talking is about, so we'll get off the people thing in a minute, because I think that's a whole different trajectory than like maybe being disappointed in maybe like the opportunities or career paths or connections, things like that. But since we're talking about disappointments in people and maybe not placing expectations on other people, what about with yourself? Because I've disappointed myself because I have expectations for myself.
Right.
So since we're talking about people for a second, do you hold yourself to certain expectations to where you disappoint yourself? Because we're fathers.
Right.
So there's days when I lay my head down and I'm like, could have been a better father today. Because of the expectations I have of myself. And I'm not going to put it like, because there's a checklist of things. Not everything. It's just, I know.
You could do better.
Right.
Is it?
But is that disappointment though? Like I never really go to bed saying, you know what, I dropped the ball today. I really just take it as a just a learning experience.
Right.
Right. And I try just not to make a pattern out of something.
And that's one thing that I've noticed about you. And that's one of the personality traits I think that I appreciate so much. And you, Phil, is that you're very like, dust it off, keep going.
Right.
Whereas I may be the type of person that lays there and thinks, man, like
that'll drive me crazy.
I messed it up. I got it. And
right.
I'm the kind of person that goes through that to get to that point.
Right.
To where
is your situation,
to where a certain time later, I'm like, you know what? What would Phil say? But it takes me a while to work through that.
Right.
A lot of times to where I'm like, man, I could have done that better. I could have done. But I also think that's one of the reasons that whatever I have accomplished or will accomplish is because when I do something, what do I approach you? How was that? What did that come across right? Could I have done better? I've approached you before. What something's not feeling right. What am I doing wrong? And you, with your candor and forthrightness, are like, you just got to do this. Like you're doing this, and you should be doing that. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. And I think that part of your personality is exactly that, to where it's like, oh well, okay, so whatever. All right, What did you do right? What did you do wrong? There they are. Okay, tomorrow's another day.
Right.
And that's what we were just talking about in the New Year's resolution thing. It's
Right.
just like, yo, every day, just you gotta do that thing. So I think that on the topic of disappointment, I think that that's a very good insight. It's like I'm sitting here saying like, this is what disappointment is to me, and you're just like, why is that disappointment? That's just life. And then you got the next day.
Right.
So that's funny because I really I strive to have that personality, and then I coerce myself sometimes to do that, and I get there, and I'm getting better at it. But that's something that's so natural for you. You know what I mean? And I'm sure you've noticed it too about him, that it's like, I remember one time I called you when I was at college and I was like stressed out. And I remember I get on the phone and I just start listing all of the things that were going wrong. And like, most people would listen, they'll empathize, and they'll say, well, I'll help you with that, and don't worry about this, and things will get better, and just take your time, and very like motherly advice. It's like
Phil's your mother.
like that's what everybody does. Phil does not do that.
Yeah.
I remember I was like going, and then on the other end of the phone, on the other end of the phone was like, yo, hey, and I was just talking, you're like, hey, and I was like, what? He was like, yo, chill out. And I remember like standing outside of my house, and I was just like, that's an option. Like I could literally just chill out right now. And it sounds so
That's
funny.
not how your brain works.
Right, but it sounds so funny, but it was just like, to him, here I am listening to all these disappointments. This person was I'm in college, and I had people like unable to come through, like in living arrangements and stuff. So I was paying like $1,000 a month rent while I was a full-time student, and
Which
working
back then in that area is
and I was working part-time and working on the weekends too. Like, and it's just like, you reminded me, okay, here I am just thinking about and listening to all my disappointments. And it's just like, what? Yeah, you just gotta go to work. You're just gonna have to pay the bills, but you don't have to be freaking out about it.
For real.
And I remember getting off the phone, and it was like a paradigm shift for me. It was like, wait, I can choose to just not freak out about this. He did, so apparently I can too. You know what I'm saying? So
do you think your disappointments are very situational? Like you made me think about it when you said like, dang, today I could have been a better father. Was that because of something you did or didn't do? Or is it more of like a holistic view, like just overall I could be a better father? Or was it like this instance?
I think it's because in a moment like that, when I was going throughout the day, I knew I could be doing better. Whatever that is, what is my attitude?
Well, why didn't you?
But then I didn't, and that's what I'm saying. So like those are those moments where, is it like a general thing? Mm-hmm. Maybe it is. Maybe it's like I was just, I'll tell you what, one thing that's just hard about being a father sometimes is you can have a wife and you can have a kid or kids, and it's still very easy to be selfish. Like I think sometimes people have this view, it's like, oh, you just have kids and that's what your just heart goes out to them. You just take care of them. And it's like, yeah, that's true. But there's still things you want to do,
right,
and still things you want to get.
Right.
So I think sometimes like it's easy to get caught up in like, it's like, I'm doing this. And at the end of the day, it's like, my kids are asleep. And it's like, I knew that whole day, and it's hard. There's balance and all that, but it's like, I knew. And then I lay down in bed at night. It's like, I should have listened to that voice. And then I'm disappointed in myself in that.
Right.
But like I said, the reverse view of that feels just like, I did what I did. Tomorrow, I'm going to do it better.
Yeah. Right.
So, and it's more forward thinking than it is. See, I get caught in the reverse thinking sometimes.
Right.
And I'm getting better at it. Don't get me wrong. Like this is over the past 4 or 5 years especially, it's an exercise for me. You do it. It's just how you're wired.
For real.
For me, it's a muscle that I've had to develop and had to work on and work on and work on, to the point now to where I can lay down and be like, all right, let's get it tomorrow. Let's get it. And that's like, whereas, man, I'm not kidding, man, because I've talked about, and we'll talk about it some more, where my dealing with anxiety and things like that, where I wouldn't sleep a whole night because I was thinking of something like that.
I do that.
Hey, I've been there. And I'm not going to say it's not going to happen again. I'm not saying that there's certain situations or events that it wouldn't cause, I don't want to say cause me to do that, but maybe put me in a place where I would do that more easily. But I mean, it really is an exercise in like just really, really reminding myself that there is a tomorrow. And that's probably more important than whatever happened today.
Well, the thing is, and this is why it kind of makes sense to me. Whatever is already behind you,
It's done.
you can't change that, Joe. You can't. There's nothing you could do about it. That didn't happen. I could have did this. And you're talking about kids. Like, one of the things, I guess most of the time when you talk about kids, the time that I get disappointed is when, like, as a father, I want my kids to be better than me.
Right.
Just naturally. I want them to be better than me. If there's anything that I'm good at, I want them to be like 10 times better at it.
Right.
And I think it's just something natural, just as a father. You want your offspring to be just like way better. One of the things that's like bothering me is I'm just a loud person. Just loud. I speak loudly. I
Clap loudly.
Everything. I'm just a loud. I'm a loud guy, right? And I'm like around the house the other day, and I'm like, yo, my kids are so loud.
They're 10 times louder than you. You're doing it.
They're like yelling.
And they're what? 4 and 2?
4 and 3.
4 and 3. That's
They're
right.
like yelling, bro. And I'm like, why are y'all yelling?
No, you're like, why are y'all yelling?
I like get to the front door and it's like they're all the way upstairs.
It sounds like a
right by
daycare
the
or
door.
something like this. Just 10 kids up there.
It's like crazy, right? And I'm just like, yo, why? Like, why are they so loud? But then I started to realize, like, in order for me to get their attention, I gotta like yell at them. Like, if I'm like talking to them, like, hey, like, what's going on? They're like, what? Like, what? Why are you talking like that? But if I'm like, hey, and they're like, oh yeah, like, yeah, what's going on?
That's their normal volume. You shouting.
And I'm just like, yo, I feel a bit disappointed that like I'm that loud with them. But that's just, I don't know.
But it's funny because different households have different communication levels. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like some stereotypical, like, New York Italian families. It's like stereotypical, just everybody talking and
At the same time.
Yeah,
no idea what's going on.
You know about that, know.
do.
But so I think everybody has that different style of communication.
Yeah, definitely.
It's funny. It's like getting desensitized. We saw a guy one time in public, like at a park, and he had a pit bull, which I've owned a few pit bulls, like love the breed, and he was training this dog, and like he was training the dog, he would stand still, and then he would whisper commands, and he would be like, "Sit," and like you're at a park. Cars going by, airplanes going over, kids screaming, yelling, chains rattling, basketball. You know what I'm saying? And he's like, lay down. And like this dog was listening because the dog can hear him. And we spoke to him. And I already knew, and you already know as I'm explaining it, but what he was teaching the dog was the only thing he needs to pay attention to is me. I don't have to compete with everything. He has to train his ear to me, no matter what's going on, as opposed to, you know what I'm saying? So I just thought about that when you were talking. So to get back on the disappointment train, let's talk about, like, everybody has goals, things that they're trying to do, things they're trying to progress in. We have a goal with the Miserable Company. I have a goal with my
my goal is to not knock the microphone over again.
Yeah, and you disappointed me. So we have goals with the Miserable Company. I have goals with my personal music production, and we can get into kind of some things that you guys want to do as well. Let's talk about some specific disappointments, not disappointments in people, not expectations in ourselves or other people, but let's talk about somebody that's listening to this podcast and, there was a phone call they were hoping to get or an email that they were hoping to get. And then kind of how, this is going to be very simple for Phil, but like how you should feel or think about those things as you experience them, because you're going to experience them.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll tell a couple examples from my life. Of course, I'm a songwriter and a producer.
Are you looking at the thing?
That's a tough gig. I'm looking at the computer.
Okay.
But yeah, as a songwriter and a producer, I mean, it's a pretty tough world. And you get a lot of, hey, we really like this tune. But that's the problem. You don't get the but. The but is kind of like out there in the universe. It's like, we really like this tune, or we're going to pitch this tune, or we want to explore this. Can you send us this too? And it's like, oh, yes. So, because you've sent out 50
right,
and got nothing. So you get this one, and it's like, oh, yeah, this is happening.
This is the one.
I'm on.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, a day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, nothing. And, you can't, it's not always appropriate and probably wouldn't look very good to reach out and say, so what's going on with that? Because if you haven't got the call, it's pretty obvious.
Right.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've dealt with that disappointment. Jeez. I don't know. There's a lot of times I'm like, why do I even still do this?
Well, I think it's just the way how they do it, though.
That's it.
It's
because currently, today, I have songs in the pipeline with artists. And it's like, they text me and it's like, I'm not going to blow anybody's spot, Andy. But they text me and they're like, yo, I'm working on this song. Like, for instance, we have a concept that we worked on and maybe I didn't produce, or maybe I did produce something and he didn't like it. So he's finding somebody else to produce it, which is fine. And he's like, yo, found a piece of music for this. I'm working on it. I'm like, dope. Can I hear it? Yeah. It's a month ago. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, that text, I found a piece of music, I'm working on it, was 3 months removed from the original conversation about it. So, and what's funny is I've learned in my situation, first of all, have no expectations. I've also learned to stop telling people, right? Because a lot of times you put unnecessary pressure on yourself.
Right.
And
What do you mean by telling people?
Like giving people expectations. I'll tell you guys, right?
Oh,
but like I'm not gonna
I have this happening.
Right, I'm not gonna call my mama, or post it, and say
yeah.
like, hey, I'm working on a song with this person. Because what happened? What happened? What happened?
Yeah.
So I've kind of learned now to not have expectations, to not make a big deal out of it. And that's something that I think, has to be learned. Of course, you have the 18-year-old dudes produce a beat. Kendrick picks it up, and all of a sudden, boom, the guy's producing for everybody. That happened. Didn't happen like that for me.
Happens very rarely like that.
Right. So over the years, I think I've gotten to the point where it's like, artists is like, hey, I'm going to work on that song. And my literal reaction now as a 33-year-old is, great. And then I literally go back to making my grilled cheese sandwich or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Whereas 10 years ago, it was like,
Everything stops.
You know what I'm saying?
All consuming.
Right. So now it's just, I've kind of learned through disappointment, probably a more professional way to go about what I do, where I'm not nudging people. So what are you doing? So what, you know, or like sitting around or stressing over it or losing sleep over it. Now it's like somebody texts me and they were like, oh yeah, I forgot I was working with that person. You know what I'm saying? I haven't even thought about that, which is cool too, because I've gotten to see the, you know, sometimes you work, you know, when you doing something creative, especially when you want to work with clients, or maybe it's more specific to what I'm doing with songwriting and production. It's like you put stuff out there, and a lot of the artists I work with are like, anything you have, send it. Like I had one guy who's like, if you got a cool snare sound, send it. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be done. You record it on your phone. You know, there's a couple guys, if I just have an idea, I'm like, oh, that'd be a cool song idea. I'll literally pick my phone up and like record a voicemail like, oh, I had this idea for a song that's like you saying this, but then really you mean this and blah, blah, blah. You're talking about that. And they'll be like, yo, that's so dope, you know? And it's like, if you really want to help the artist out,
Right.
you know, that kind of stuff is valuable. So, but through doing those things, I've found that, you know, for instance, our buddy Clark Beckham, supposedly, you know, that I'm going to have a song that I produced on his upcoming record, which is awesome. And we kind of finished up the final version of it this week or last week. And what's really it was last week. But what's really cool is he had sent me, he was like, hey, tell me what you think about this. And it was like a key track and him singing like a demo of a song he wrote. I was like, yo, that's kind of dope. And I was like, actually, because I was sitting right there in front of my computer, I was like, I'm just going to produce this song. So I literally just, in 2 or 3 hours, you know, just like threw some drums, played the bass, and did a terrible job of guitar, but actually made the final record, which sounds pretty good. It's just me like recording 2 or 3 notes and like quantizing them and then copy and pasting because I'm not that good of a guitarist. And so I did that, and he didn't ask me to do it. I don't even think I really told him at the onset, and I just produced it. And like after 3 hours, you know, pressed play and sat back and was like, hey, this is kind of good. You know, like I like this. So I sent it to him. This was like probably close to 2 years ago. And then, you know, 2 months ago, we're in Malibu. Remember, you reminded me the other day that I was working on it in Malibu.
We were in Tennessee. We're like back to back in 2 different locations.
Right. So I'm like in Malibu or in Tennessee initially. And he like texts me and he's like, hey, I want to put this song on my album. And he was like, can you send it to me? And I was like, what? Like he said the title of the song and I had no recollection. And I was like, what? He was like, dude, you remember that song? And I was like, nah, bro. Like, and the computer I had with me, like, didn't have it on. I was like, I don't know what he's getting me confused with somebody else. So he like calls me. He's like, you don't remember that time I sent you a song and you just like randomly produced it and sent it back? And he was like, remember? And he like sung it and I was like, oh yeah. And he was like, yeah, I want to put that on my record. Can you send me, I'm about to record vocals at the studio. Can you like send me just a cut with no vocals and then we can go back and work on it? I was like, I hope. Like, let me go make sure I still have this somewhere. And sure enough, I found it on one of my computers and like pulled it out, did a quick mix and like sent it to him. But what's really cool is I think my evolution has been do something and expect something from it and be disappointed, to now just doing a lot, having no expectations, and then being delightfully surprised at
whatever comes.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, hey, there is something. So it's kind of like planting seeds that you forget about or hiding acorns. And then somebody digs it up and is like, hey, this is yours. And you're like, oh, that's right. I forgot about that. You know what I mean?
I think that's an important part of professional development, though.
Right.
Like allowing missed opportunities, expectations not being met, all that kind of thing to shape how you approach new situations, like learning, like kind of what you were saying at the beginning, and even referring to in the New Year's resolution things. Like yesterday has happened. I'm going to learn about learn from what I did wrong or did right, and try to apply that to moving forward. So I think it's not necessarily like, oh, I've been let down so much, so now I don't expect anything. It's more so like, now I know how to handle it
Right.
in my head, rather than just blowing up about it and being.
And you learn that there's more opportunities.
Right.
And that not getting this one doesn't kill you.
Yeah. I mean,
you're going to survive
when you start out and the first thing, even if it's small and that comes in, you're like, I made it. Then you realize that that wasn't the thing that's going to, propel you.
Yeah. And I remember being devastated getting feedback or phone calls or getting things. It's just like, no, it's not going to work. And I remember that feeling of like just being so down.
Yeah.
Because of that. And it's funny because I'm even saying this now, and whatever I have right now in the pipeline, if Clark texts me, he's like, "Hey, bro, sorry, it didn't make the cut." Would I be disappointed? Obviously.
Yeah.
But it would literally be like,
would you be disappointed only because he told you that he wanted to put it on his album? Like if he never told you, like if he had the information that he needed and he didn't need you to send him anything. And one day he just like, hey, just want to let you know my album drops tomorrow. You're on it as a producer.
No, exactly. Because to me it was a foregone conclusion that this is not going to be anything.
Yeah.
So now I've reset my expectations. But I think the topic of today is dealing with that disappointment. I think what I'm trying to say is I've learned two things. Number one, it's okay to have expectations. But number two, it's also okay if those expectations aren't met.
Right.
Because there's another thing.
Yeah.
And I think that number two has changed for me because it used to be bad news, devastated. Now it's just, I got another one. And then I'm going to have another one. And then I'm going to have another one. So there's no point in, and I think as a songwriter too, every song that you write is so valuable, especially at the beginning.
Yeah.
So whereas now, and I don't say this any type of way, but I can write 2 songs a day and be like, well, they're better than any songs I wrote 5 years ago. They're both trash.
But now you're just like, on to the next song.
On to the next one. So I think now I've also created such a quantity of songs that I can be honest about the quality of my next one. There are some songs you just believe in, and then there's other songs where you're just like, well. And then there's other songs where it's like, well, this stinks, and then people love it. So I think I've also learned that I don't know everything.
Right.
So even my expectations are probably off, and I'm disappointed about nothing. It's like, we talked about, you sat down with me with an artist one time and we were playing stuff, and all of the stuff they liked was all of the stuff that I didn't want to play because I didn't think they would like it. And I think we talked about it on the way back. It's like, I think you were the one that was like, you just play everything. Like, stop thinking about it. If he wants to hear everything, just play everything. So we're sitting backstage in the room and I'm playing it. And then we get back in the car and I was like, why did he like this one and not that one? Now, this was like, I thought this was this was the money maker right here, and nothing. Played it. 30 seconds. Next. And I was like, that was my best chance. It. But then he throws on this other one. He's like, oh, what is this? And I'm like, wait, really? Like what is this? Like you like it or you hate it? Because, so it's funny how, we could be disappointed about things and just our whole basis is off.
Perception.
Our whole, it's so hard to judge yourself anyway, judge your own work anyway. But
let me ask you a question. I thought about this while we're talking. I have someone that I know who's, I won't get into too many specifics, but he's a creative professional in a way. And he's pursuing a career and has been attempting to pursue that career for some time. He's faced a lot of rejection in said path, and he's still going. So what do you guys think? What do you guys say to the person? Not just that is continuing to persevere. Obviously, that's the mark of strength is perseverance. But to the person that keeps trying and doesn't seem to get anywhere, is constantly performing at X level, not seeming to get to like the next stage, because you think about like, some of these things, these projects you're producing songs for, these people were like maybe local artists, and then you started, getting some projects maybe with people that had a little bit more notoriety, a little bit more of a following and a fan base. And there's obvious levels or stages you could probably see in that progression that you've had. What do you guys think? What do you say to that kind of person that's in a situation like that?
One, be honest with yourself, right? If as a musician, for me, right, if I keep complaining about, I'm only playing on this level, and this is the only level that I'm playing on, but I want to play it on a professional level. If I'm not practicing and sewing into myself and developing myself and my skill to be prepared for that next level,
right?
How could I want something that I'm not necessarily skilled or prepared for? Right? So how much are you really investing into that talent?
Yeah, and you're saying too, like outside of opportunities, like
just
on your own time, doing whatever you can do,
whatever you can do,
right?
Like Jeremy, on the other hand, as a producer, he had to fall on his face at some point to then to say, man, this is whack, like this is like trash. All right, I gotta rebuild.
Right.
Gotta pick myself up. I gotta study this. I gotta learn how to do this. The industry's moving in this way. All right, now I need to learn that. So that you just have to equip yourself so that when that opportunity does fall, you can then sustain yourself and support yourself. So it's, I think a lot of times doors don't necessarily open because honestly, you're really not ready.
That's a good point.
You're really not ready. Like, if it does happen prematurely, you're gonna crumble, bro.
Most likely.
And that desire that you have for that particular
achievement or whatever,
it's just gonna fail.
Yeah.
And that thirst that you have for that, it's gonna be gone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely challenging. I wholeheartedly agree with the practicing approach. Being a photographer, that's something that I'm always trying to do. Like, I'm always watching videos, reading stuff, trying to shoot new things. I think in a lot of ways, a lot of different creative professions have evolved a lot over the last 10 years. So that's very important. But at the same time, I think what I'm thinking of in my head is not just the practicing aspect. What about the person that's also like putting themselves out there, cold calling, seeking opportunities, and always getting no's?
Ask yourself, why are you getting no's?
Okay. I would say first, like, to answer that, I have just a regular answer for the original question too, but to address that specifically is don't fall into the trap of thinking that there's something wrong with everybody else. They just don't get it. They don't see the value in this.
Sure.
They don't understand this. I would say don't fall into that trap and do what he's saying. Really, really be honest with yourself. Am I ready for that client? Am I ready for that platform? Because I was going to say, I think sometimes we have this unrealistic view of how opportunities come about, that it's like, I'm going to have this thing and then I'm going to prove myself. It might happen. Yes.
Right.
But I think for the most part, how I've experienced it is that I've worked and I've worked and I've worked and I've continued to, and I've gotten those and I've gotten those and I've done the cold calls or I've done the,
Right.
but then what happens over time is that you become better in your craft and then you move on to like another class of people that are attracted to your work. And then you work and you work and you work and then you move on to another
Right.
class.
Right.
So it's like, first, I'm in my dorm room in college recording the guy down the hall for free.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or we did that here
Stuff here. Yeah.
years ago. It's like, yeah, I'll just record it because I got a microphone and
And a computer
software that can
on the
do
computer,
it. You know, that's the first class of people.
Right.
And then it got to the class of people that's like, I want you to do my work. How much does it cost? And I was like, $100.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then there was that class of people. And then there's the next class that were willing to work with you
Mm-hmm.
to where now I'm nobody in
But
the spectrum of the music
but
industry.
Is it these people seeking you out, or is it?
Well, that's what I was saying.
Right.
So that's kind of, thank you, taking me back to my point. I think a lot of times when you're getting those no's or you're meeting those disappointments,
Mm-hmm.
I think when I look back on my experience, it was because I was reaching too high in that moment. And there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Right.
So, but what you have to know is I probably shouldn't have got that client. So I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't have worked with that artist. So I just got to keep going until
Yeah.
one day. So my story is exactly everything I just said. Most of the biggest opportunities I ever got, or say when I transitioned from one class to the next or one level to the next, it wasn't me reaching out to somebody. It was somebody going, that guy looks like he should be working with me.
Right.
So they kind of come to me.
It almost, in a way, is a more it's unsolicited, natural sort of evolution. Of
And
the
that's what I was
situation.
going to say. A lot of it is just relationship.
Yeah.
So you build a relationship and they have a relationship and you get involved in that relationship and you work your way.
Yeah.
Or like what happens with a lot of people, and this was kind of the case with me and Clark. I mean, I went to Clark when I was playing in the choir and he was singing in the choir, and I was like, do you have any recordings? And he's like, no. And I'm like, you should record something. Do you have original songs? Yeah. Well, I can record. Well, he was like, man, I don't really got money to do that. I'm like, let's not worry about that. Let's just record. So now you fast forward, and it's just cool how you build a relationship, and sometimes you progress together. Or, I mean, in all honesty, he's progressed light years ahead of me, and now the deal with Quincy Jones that he has and all of those things, and now I get to even be a part of his current career
Because of that relationship.
because of that relationship. So it happens that way, but it also happens to where, one thing I like to say is there's certain rooms that you want to be in. And it does go back to opportunities, but every project or everything that I've ever done has positioned me for another bigger or better thing, if you want to look at it like that, to where you get like me. I think the last 3 or 4 years for me has been moments where I've been like looking around and I'm like, why am I here? You know what I mean? Like, this was the thing 3 years ago that if I would have tried, I would have got a no.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, I'm just here and I don't even really know how.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm the bum in this room. You know what I'm saying? So I think a lot of times we have this expectation that's like, it's like, I think Hugh McLeod, who did that Ignore Everybody book, who I'm probably going to mention in every podcast, one of the things he said, if your plan is to do something and be discovered, your plan sucks. And it's like a lot of people have this unreal expectations where it's like, I'm going to make this and then I'm going to do the next thing and people are going to love it. And it's just not like that. It's like, And I think a lot of it is just paying your dues. That's the way I look. And again, there's people that bypass this. I understand that.
Right.
But I
To the
think
rule.
for that person you're talking about,
Yeah.
it's just part of the process.
Yeah.
Like the failure is as hallmark as this sounds. Every failure is just a stepping stone on the way to where you're going.
Right.
Every disappointment, it's just part of the process. Like that's the only way. It's like, so now it's like if I send a song, and this happened when we got back from Malibu, made a new connection. I got this great song, talking to a guy, like, yeah, this artist is looking for this. I'm like, hey, I got that. I know I do. I go back, nail the demo, send it. No response.
Yeah.
Not even, like, and this, we've talked about this, just being in the dark, a lot of times. It's like, just say, I hate it. And I would appreciate
something.
that a lot more
Right.
than just nothing.
Yeah.
But he may not. Because 4 months from now, he may be like, hey, can you send me that song again?
Yeah.
Because I can't find it, but I think that this might work now. So that's a disappointment, sure. But is it? I don't know.
It's only a disappointment because you have expectation on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And whether it's the expectation of an outcome or the timing.
Right.
A lot of times we're disappointed about things because they don't happen when we want them to.
But I think-
even if they're still eventually going to happen, we get caught up in this disappointment.
A lot of people have disappointment because we live in a generation now that
Instant
expects everything.
feedback. Yeah.
Instant. Y'all seen this new app? It's called Earnin. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, it's like basically a loan on your
It's
paycheck.
basically like payday loan.
Oh, my.
But listen. So you tell the app like how much you get paid and the hours you worked, and that you instantly get the money when you clock out. That's what the commercial says. So guys like, I've worked Monday and Tuesday and I don't get my money until Friday. That's not fair. So I use Earnin. I'm doing a commercial for him right now. But then it's like no interest, no this and that. And I'm like, oh, because Bama's going to use it.
Dangerous.
And then, but I don't know the
especially online, not reading the
clauses.
terms
I don't
of
know the
service,
clauses.
except-
I don't know the clauses, but I guarantee you there's like a clause. If you don't pay on that Friday, 50% interest.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm
Something-
saying?
something
And that's
like
how they're going to get people. And I'm thinking like, man, we're going to have kids. Man, I just needed my $50. Now I owe him $600. That's going to be happening. So it's like that instant gratification that
That's just the world that we live in now, bro.
and I think a lot of times we're disappointed. Like that was the thing. We're disappointed in things, not because the outcome hasn't happened, but because we don't want to wait. So, and that was my original answer to your question, to that guy that's just like, no. It's like, this is the way I look at it. Everybody else that has started doing what I was doing has quit when I started.
Right.
They've all quit, not me. Or maybe they haven't all quit, but they're quitting.
You just don't see
I'm
them.
gonna outlast everybody.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's new people starting behind me, and there's younger people, but they don't have the experience that I have. They don't have the relational skills that I've built the past 10 years, the networking skills that I've built the past
And
10
the
years.
relationships.
Right. They don't have that.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it is just like, there's the statement that it's lonely at the top. You've heard that. And the way I look at it is the more that I keep climbing and the more that I keep going, there's less and less competition.
Sure.
So, and that's just the way that I look at it. I remember I was at a crossroads like 2 or 3 years ago. I had was trying to get involved in a project, sent stuff to people, and literally just heard back like, you're not good enough, which is a subjective thing.
Sure.
But in that moment,
It still hurts.
bro, devastated. And I remember, like, I heard that at like 2 p.m., whatever. And I remember like 10 p.m., just like going about my day, but it was just on the back of my mind. Just hurt. And I remember like 10 p.m. was like, you know what? It's very simple. This is the end of it. And this is where you would have been immediately, but took me 8 hours to get there. This is it. Regardless of what I was just told, I've got 2 options. I can quit or I can just keep going.
Yeah.
And I stopped and I was like, I'm just going to keep going.
Sure.
That's it. And that moment, the biggest disappointment of my music career, that moment, it was undoubtedly was probably the best moment for me. Because I think from that time, I'm unshakable now. Like, and I think that was proof, like, I survived that. So, because I think a lot of times the real fear in those moments is that that's it for me. That was it. That was my best chance. That was the best I had. That was it. And I think once you decide, I'm just going to keep going, and then you remove yourself from that, I think you look back later and you're just like, what could happen now? There's nothing that could happen now that, you know, that could beat that. Or if there is, I go at it with that understanding now of just, it doesn't matter what happens. I'm just going to keep going.
Sure.
You know, so that's my biggest thing for that person, because I am that person still, regardless. And I think that's one thing, is I had this fantasy in my mind too, is that at some point you do something and then you pass all of this. Then it's smooth sailing. But man, and then you have friends who are on world tours and they win Grammys and they're grinding with more stress than you are. And you're like, oh, this never stops.
It scales.
It scales.
Yeah.
Like, this never stops. So it's like, okay, so how am I going to do this? Because, man, don't get it twisted, man. Those people that are the top of their field, you see it with these, even, let's talk YouTube content creators. These cats go for 4 or 5 years and then they're like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't stop. There's more pressure the more success you get. So to me, I've kind of like put the line in the sand for myself. Still got these goals. Still would love to achieve these things. Still would love to do this. But I'm only willing to do this much. Right. And because what I've seen and what I've experienced in this world is that I can go beyond that. It's not worth it. Because there's a lot of people going beyond it. There's a lot of people doing absolutely everything.
Like, the return on investment is like,
yeah.
I mean, so I guess the whole thing with disappointment to me is, if you're being disappointed, it means that you're on your way to something. If you wake up every day, you just going through the motions, and you just take a paycheck, go home, you watch your favorite show, go to sleep. It's a comfortable life. But if you're living a life where it's like you've got things happening and you're trying to achieve something, and you are having to deal with these no's or these no responses or these whatever. I mean, to me, it's a good way for me to remind myself that I even had that possibility because I'm doing something, because I'm going somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like I've heard people say before, if you're not failing, you should be worried. You know, if you're not experienced failure, you should be worried because you're not trying something new,
right?
Or you're not heading somewhere.
Yourself.
You're not challenging yourself, and that's really the way I look at it now. Disappointment or failure in general is just like, I'm getting to Phil's personality. I'm getting to feel that.
That's your New Year's resolution.
Right. I'm getting to that point where I can just go, whatever.
Yeah.
Next. You know, and I had to work on that with how people responded to me too, because I used to put a lot of weight on on the expectations they had of me. You know what I'm saying? And like, if I felt people were disappointed in me, I was like, oh man, I'm messing up. Man, so I've just gotten to the point now, it's like, there's a certain level of don't care that's okay.
Yeah.
For real.
Necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, you know, choosing where you're willing to lose and where you have to win.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one thing that I've figured out. I used to put so much pressure on myself. I used to tell my wife all the time, like, man, I just feel like I do this, but I'm letting that person down. I do this and I'm letting that person down. I feel like somebody's always disappointed in me. I don't feel like that anymore because I've just figured it
Probably
out.
going to be true.
Yeah, no, it's exactly. it's not that I was wrong. No, there's constantly going to be somebody disappointed in me. That's okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can't take it personally.
And I think that mindset was a lot easier for me than the disappointment in myself.
Right.
So that is, I think, the correct response is like, hey, I've chosen the things that I have to put my energy towards and the places that I have to win. I'm not going to lose my family. So if you're upset with me, that's okay. Yeah. Because if I'm winning here, I'm willing to lose there, you know. And that has been easy for me once I realized it. But what hasn't been so easy is I could have done that better. And y'all know me, I'm a perfectionist.
Right.
He was making fun of me first time we were shooting videos. I was moving this plant around for 10 minutes.
Like inches.
I'd move it and walk back to the frame and move it. You know, not to say everything in here is not perfect, but what I've had to learn to do is like, that applies to everything in my life. That I'm hard on myself. So hard on myself. You know, to where if we're in a room together and I'm interacting with somebody, we get in the car and I'm like, you know, how did that feel to you? And like, he's on to the next thing. We going to Jack in the Box or not? And I'm still, you know what I'm saying? I'm still like, how did that feel? What were the positives? What did they respond to? What could I have done better? And like, that's just how my mind is programmed. You know what I'm saying? When we leave church, I'm in the car. My wife's trying to talk to me, and all I'm thinking about is, how did I do this? What could I have done better? Who did this? What did that person, you know? And it's like, that's just the way my brain is wired. I do my yard work, and I literally go stand in the middle of the street and look around my yard and find, gotta fix that. And I'll go fix it. I could
have mowed better. I'll do better.
I gotta fix it. And then I go back. And that's just how my mind is wired. My mind is wired to critique myself.
But it's good to a certain extent.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the action is bad. I think the reaction to what I've done is the bad thing. So it's like, okay, I want to perfect that. I want to do it right. That's okay. But when I don't do that and I react negatively to it, or I dwell on it, or it affects me emotionally or whatever, that's where the issue is at. And I think that's the thing, you know, to that person.
Right.
It's just like, it's funny because a lot of the men that I greatly admire, Jurgen Klopp, Liverpool's manager, a lot of like people that I see that I'm just like, yo, that's a man. It's the people that are never pulled either direction. They just always seem to be like
steady.
You know, and it's like it's like a good coach in a press conference, and the journalists are trying to bait him or trying to get him to think a certain way, and they just always pull it back. You know, and Liverpool's on an incredible run right now, so they're like, you're about to break a record for the most wins. Like, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And he's just like, I'm really not interested in any stats. I know you guys love numbers. All I'm thinking about, we have a game tomorrow, we got to win it. And it's like, you see this tug of war on these guys, you know, and it's like people trying to pull them. And it's just like, they always just seem like they got this path and they're just going to stay on it. And like, that's, man, when I started out, it was like I had this path and it was constant, just being blown with the wind. And then it took a little bit more. And I think now where I'm getting is, you're disappointed? Sorry. This is the direction I'm going. Like this, I'm sorry. This is the direction I'm going. Because you constantly have things. You got your own mind trying to pull you back and forth. And it's like, I admire those men so much that are just able to just remove the emotion out of the equation. Just matter of fact, this is what I'm doing.
This is what I have to do.
This is what I just did. This is what I have to do. This is what I have to do. This is what I have. I'm sorry. This is what I have to do. You know. Yeah. So that's it, man. Regardless, whatever, any disappointment, anything.
I think sometimes when you're pursuing something, you're given an opportunity. They pop up every now and then for something that is beyond, for lack of a better term, beyond your pay grade, beyond your experience. And And I think some people, I think we get those opportunities because they're supposed to be just a learning experience. It isn't necessarily supposed to be a marker of like, oh, I've made it to this next level. Because, I don't know, like, you get an opportunity to do something or work with someone or to, the opportunity comes and you're like, this is what the next level looks like. This is something that I've wanted to do. This is a goal that I had. And then you do that thing to whatever degree of success and professionalism and all that. And then you go on with your life and you're thinking, I'm going to get more of these. But you continue to get the jobs and the opportunities that you were getting before. And you're like, I'm better than this now. Right. And that's the wrong way to approach it.
Well, and I think that a lot of times we try to force things, and some of the best things just happen naturally. Mm-hmm. So it's like for a while, my niche was recording just in random locations. And like, that's what I did. And people came to me because like, that was the thing. That's not what I wanted to do. It's just for that time, that season, mm-hmm. That's what worked. And I think sometimes we try to force things, and what we end up doing is saying, I want this to happen, because we're thinking very short-sighted. It may be,
I deserve it.
Or yes, that, or it may be something we think we want. How many opportunities have you had that fell through, you were disappointed about, and now you go, thank God.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Thank God I didn't do that. I'm so glad that fell through. Again, I think just in general, dealing or disappointment, for the most part, mulling over it is just a waste of time, mm-hmm. because it may not even have been the best thing for you anyway.
Right.
So I think take from it what you can, and then it's just a matter of moving on.
You gotta trust the process, man.
Yeah.
Seriously, you do. I've been working on this project with my family now for like 5 years. And
a business.
Right. And this business, just trying to get a loan for this business has been like the biggest disappointment I have ever dealt with, ever. Just, going into these banks and just trying to get this capital, bro. Like, just, can we get a loan? Can we get a loan? Can we get a loan? And they're like, yeah, fill out this paper, fill out that paper, fill out this paper. And it's like, no. And if it wasn't for just like, I kind of got used to the no's. It was like, all right, cool. Next. So that my expectancy now was just like, no, I'm gonna fill this paper out, but I'm pretty sure you're gonna say no.
Yeah.
Right? No. All right, cool. Regardless of, we had a vision, right? And we were just definitely fueled by the vision. The vision is getting this business established. However we get there, like, that's just where we gotta go. Mm-hmm. That's where we're going, right? So even though these other people said no, we just gotta find another way.
Right.
And what's funny is you're saying like, I'm just going to fill these papers out. Pretty sure you're going to say no, but whatever. That's probably a more productive place to be in than I'm going to fill this out passionately, and there's a possibility you're going to say yes, because every no, it's like energy. It's drained and it slows you down, to whereas now you're just like, whatever, I'll fill it out. I'll fill them all out. Just give them to me. It doesn't matter,
You do it because it's work. It's a step in the process, and if it doesn't work out,
and it's like this funny, because I think that applies across the board. It's like now, it's like I used to work on music because of the possibility. Now I'm just working on music because that's what I want to do.
Right.
I don't care if you like it or not. I don't care if it makes me money or if it goes anywhere. If it does, great.
Exactly.
But if not, so it's like the same thing as filling out these forms.
Hey, man,
healthier mindset.
Right. I'm just going to do it, And it's like, man, I just feel like that's such a much more productive place to be, because it's so much more consistent and it's so much easier. we're talking about energy and stuff being taxing. Like, man, emotions are taxing.
Right.
If you're putting heart and soul into everything, like, you can only go so far. You're gonna get burnt out. You're gonna get tired. But if you're just like, if your heart and soul is more based off of your passion and less off of your stress and anxiety, and then like it travels. There's longevity in that. That's not so much in the, I'm gonna do this because there's opportunity, and didn't happen. Oh, now I gotta pump myself back up,
Yeah.
as opposed to just doing it. And that's in the war of art. Stephen Pressfield talks about that the hardest thing about writing is to sit down to write. And sometimes you just gotta just sit down to do it. You just gotta do it because that's what you're doing, as opposed to because there's just some great opportunity. We're gonna get this. It's gonna happen. It's gonna, and it's just writing for the sake of writing, producing for the sake of producing, whatever you're doing, because it's what you enjoy, and then let the opportunities come to you, and do your due diligence in creating
your time,
those relationships, and paying your dues and becoming better at what you're doing. And then, like I said, just everything else that happens. You said something earlier. We were talking about, you're like, I just look at whatever happens in the future as a bonus. And that's a cool way to look at it too. I'm producing music and I'm writing music. Somebody picks something up, sweet. I just look at it as that's just an extra thing that happened, as opposed to that's the reason, I'm doing something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that situation that I was referring to earlier with that connection that I made recently, it wasn't something that I sought out. Like we were talking earlier about discussing at some point the path that your life takes for things, and how like you wouldn't have gotten here as you are now had X, Y, and Z not happen. And I think about the connection going back. I would have not had this potential opportunity in this connection with this person had I not had a relationship or friendship with someone in college who was also a photographer. She knew, or we worked together, we shot together. She moved, started working somewhere. That place that she was working, she said, "Hey, we're looking for photographers in your area." So I was like, "Sure." And I started shooting, making measly money, which I still do that job and I still make measly money with it. But, and I just do it because it's an income. So I did not want to do this, but I had a shoot come up right before Thanksgiving, 2 days before, in the busiest city in our area. Following rush hour times. I'm like, this is going to suck. I don't want to drive to DC. I don't want to shoot this because I'm going to get back. I'm going to like be heading back home in rush hour and holiday traffic.
A 30-minute trip is going to be 3 hours.
I was like, I don't want to do it, but I want $150, which is basically what I made from that. But had I not just been like, all right, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to shoot this. I don't care about the traffic, whatever. I wouldn't have ended up taking pictures of this person's house. And the person making some small talk, she said, "Why aren't you bringing, this different type of gear, like lights and all this stuff?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's just not what this company wants." And I'm like, why does she know about this process at all? Because most people are like, "All right, you're going to make my house look pretty." You know what I mean? But she had some knowledge, and I observed that, she understood it, and we were making small talk. And then it came up like, oh, I know this because I work with people who do this and have this and shoot like this. And then she's like, I work here. And it's like, oh, okay. So let's stay in contact, and she's like, yeah. So, I mean, and again, that like I talked to someone who has shot for this publication, and a good connection that I've built recently. And I'm like, what should I do to properly foster this relationship and stay in contact? I asked the lady if I could email her, and she said yes. And he was like, I would wait like a month or two before you email her. And I was like, a month or two? Why? And he was like, he's like, this is how it is. And I'm thinking, like, if I have to wait a month or two just to email her and remind her that I exist, how long will it be before I actually have like the opportunity in this process?
But so like talking about disappointment, does it matter if it was 3 years from now if it came through?
No, not at all. And I'll tell you why, because he made one good point in this situation. And this is about the perspective thing. I'm thinking like, this is an important potential connection. I need to be like on it
Now.
But he's like, wait about a month or two. But in this time frame, look at your work that you have online. Look at the stuff that you're going to show her. Is it ready?
Be honest with yourself.
And I'm like, oh no.
Absolutely not.
Like, not at all. Plus, not the fact that like I was there, I was shooting, and she followed my website based off of my email address, which I'm an idiot, and I still have my old wedding photography work on that website. I never sent anybody that website or anything like that, but it exists. And she found that, and she was like, "Oh, you shoot mostly weddings?" I was like, I was like, I do commercial work. So like, she already had an impression of me before we shot, and she saw stuff that she would have no interest in hiring me for. So I have I have that first impression, and I've got to try, other than obviously the meeting, like that physical first impression, but like before I can connect with her and expect something to come potentially from it, I need to take stock and really like not overly criticize myself, but I need to be honest, like you said, and be honest with myself and with the work that I have out. Is it good enough? Is it not even good enough? Is it the kind of stuff that they would be willing to or interested to hire me for?
The way I look at it is because that good enough thing is so difficult.
It's subjective.
Like the way I look at it is,
are you doing your best?
Right. Is that the best that I can do? And this is the thing. I think along the way, I've thought, this is the best that I can do. So it must be good enough. Man, when I look back now. Whew. So I think that honesty of being able to say, this is the best that I can do, and it's not good enough. That's what I found out that moment 2 years ago. Somebody was brutally honest with me. It's like, this is the best that I can do. And I was just told by a reliable source that it's just not good enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to sit back down and just keep doing it. And what's funny is if I played music from before that event and from after that event, because I produce in batches. So I go at it for 3 months, and then I don't touch it for 2 months. And then I go back at it for 3 months. So it's funny the way my folders are organized on my computer. It's like older, newest. So I can go back and say, like, this is that batch from the beginning of 2018.
Newister.
Here's the second half of 2018. Yeah. Here's 2019. You know, and it's funny. So I can go in and listen to these different batches. And it's like, man, from each one, I think subjectively for myself, they're just better. Each batch is better. And I think if you listened before and after, because you live in a lie. You're disappointed because you think you're good enough and you're just not.
But is it because of comparison? Like, who's to say that you're not good enough?
Oh, okay, so that's the tough part of it. Now some things. Okay, the reason I put it like that is I'm specifically talking about top 40 pop radio. There's a very, very how do you put it?
Distinct.
It's very clear what your song should sound like, quality-wise, stylistically. It's pretty clear. Now, do songs outside of that mold make it in popular music? Of course, it happens. It's a lot easier for somebody like, I mentioned Kendrick Lamar earlier. It's a lot easier for him to bust in it without a normal kind of pop song than it would be an unknown name, say. Right. So that was somebody saying you're trying to create this and you're not doing it. So that's why I say good enough in that scenario. Now, who's to say that one of the perfect example, Kanye West, when he met, who was it? No, not Kanye West. Somebody met with Kanye West. I got to think of who this is. It was Mike Posner, one of my favorite songwriters. Mike
the
Posner.
Jay-Z thing.
I took a pill and a bees.
Yeah.
That guy. Okay. Well, there goes copyright claims or whatever. But so he's one of my favorite artists. He's one of my favorite songwriters. Dude, I've showed you his songs and we're both just like, dang, man. Like, whoo, hits deep, you know. Like love his style, whatever. Pretty much everything he's done, I just like it. So he was working with another artist that he started from the ground up with, another rapper, and that rapper ended up making some connections, and he got to be in the studio with Kanye. And this was like late registration, graduation Kanye
Post Jesus
time,
walks.
you know, yeah, probably around that time. So, and he sits down, and we're talking about what's good enough, whatever. And he sits down and plays like what he thought was like, you know, this is it. This is the song. I got one chance to show Kanye my music, and this is it. He said he played it. And however it went down, basically Kanye just was not interested. Like basically got on his phone or something and like made no comment. Was like, all right, where are we going now? And he was like, oh man. Like that was it. That was the best thing I had. And that was it. Just my one chance to play for Kanye, and I blew it, you know. Then, by some chance in the story, very soon after that, he gets to like, I think in like Jay-Z's office, like in New York, sits down with Jay-Z and plays every song but the song that he played for Kanye. And Jay-Z's like, yeah, like, and Jay-Z's thinking about offering him a deal. And he's like, so is that it? And he's like, yeah. And he goes, well, I have one other song that I haven't shown you. And he didn't want to show it because Kanye just was not interested. So he's like, well, play it. He said he plays it. And like Jay-Z stands up. And he was like, why wouldn't you show me this one? Like, this is the one. You know, and I'm sure he's sitting in that room and he's so confused. You know, because he's like, wait a second. It got no reaction from a guy you're working with, but it's your favorite one. And he's just like, what is happening? You know, so you say like, how do you know what's good enough? And so maybe that's not the right way to phrase it. So I was trying to make a specific thing, and somebody who's currently making that thing just says, that's not the thing. Okay, you're close, but that's not it.
All right.
So that being said, I also understand that somebody else could listen to that very same thing he listened to and go, that's it. Here's your deal. Sign on the dotted line. You know what I mean? So I understand that. But you were talking about earlier, being honest with yourself. When I got that feedback, probably the reason it was so devastating is because I, in my heart of hearts, knew
That
they're right.
Yeah.
They're right. And I think that experience has helped me with that moment, because it's very easy, so easy. We're talking about like taking responsibility, not saying something wrong with him. I could have been like, oh yeah, well, he's an idiot. He doesn't know nothing. That thinks he's Mr. Big Shot. Could have done that.
All right.
And that's easier. That would have been easy to just be like, he doesn't know. But see, that's what you know those people that are like wildly overconfident. And you're just like, oh my gosh. It's like almost
invented their
it's
trade,
almost
yeah.
embarrassing. You know what I'm saying? You're like, oh. And it's like, that's how those people are. Nobody can tell them nothing. You know? And it was that moment for me of just going, okay, that is the truth. And it sucks. And I think that's why I used the word devastating. And I said it was the hardest disappointment I ever had to deal with. And I stand by that. I think because I knew it was true. At that time, what I was producing was not good enough. Now, that's another thing. For that person that's like constantly dealing with disappointment or dealing with no's, it's a good sign. You're doing something, you're progressing. But also don't get caught up. My mom used to tell me, because I'm that type of person, you're not what you do. You are not what you do. I am not my creation. I am not my idea.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
you can criticize my idea, you can criticize my creation, and you may be right, but that's not me. You're not criticizing me. So that's another thing that I've learned, where if somebody looks at me and says, if I say, hey, let's do this, and you're like, no, that sucks. A lot of people go, what? What's wrong? You don't like my what? I think it's a good idea. You got a better idea? You don't got a better idea. And it's like, because when you've criticized that, you've criticized them. And one thing that I've gotten better at in my old age is that if I have an idea and somebody's like, no, that sucks, I'm like, all right, why? And most of the time now I'm like, yeah, you're right. As a poet, we can skip all that. Again, it's that emotion thing, but it's just remembering that okay, so in that moment when it was told that's not good enough, what I heard at first and what I had to work through was I'm not good enough. Right? Just be real. In that moment, that's what it was.
No.
That's what I heard.
How?
Because that's what I'm saying.
Because he's him and you're you.
This was that learning.
For real.
This was that learning moment where it was like, and because I trusted and I believed and was being brutally honest with myself, I took it. But the problem was that I think at first I took it as that was me. But then I think one thing is I remember this moment where I was like caught in that he's an idiot or am I not good enough for this? And I sat down and I like played one of the songs. And when it was over, I said,
maybe they're right.
Maybe I should stop producing.
no, no, I said, I can see the other side of it now. If I take this unrealistic set of lenses I have off my eyes, I can see it. I don't agree with everything.
Right.
But it's like, yeah, they're right. They're right. And then it was like, but that's not going to be the best song I ever write or ever produce. Mm-hmm. So then that's when it started becoming that again. And I remember the person texted me after the conversation and was like, yo, keep going. And then my response to them was, I can't stop and I won't stop. Because I had worked through that where it's like, that's not me. That's that song. And that's okay. And like, I can do something better and I can keep going. And so that was, it was a monumental moment, especially in my music, because it was the ultimate opportunity.
Right.
That's a burden that a lot of creatives carry. And I think a lot of people, if they ever listen to this, will relate to just taking that personal offense. And I'm not saying that if you don't feel that way, then you aren't a creative person. I think it's a mindset thing. But so don't be offended.
I'm not.
But like people who are working in a creative profession, especially like we said earlier, people who love what they do, it's very easy to take something personal, because I got into photography because it interested me. And then it became a passion. So it became something that I loved before it became a way for me to make money. So, if I had some people who don't want to create a career out of that passion, like people who like, I'm just going to go work in, corporate IT or something, but I'm still going to be a music producer. Or I'm still going to be a photographer. They're not necessarily always putting themselves out there for putting their work out there and putting themselves out there for that criticism. So maybe it doesn't take as personal. But when you're trying to combine both avenues and both paths and mindsets with that, it's a little bit easier. And I relate to you in that way. I do struggle with taking that personal. It does take, again, it gets easier if you have the right mindset and you allow yourself to think through it properly and give yourself the time. It gets better.
Right. And it gets easier as you kind of traverse those different levels or classes too, because you just begin to understand, like, okay, you don't like it. That's fine. But I've experienced enough of other people that I respect that have given me positive feedback that it's just a confidence thing.
The balance that I see with people who have, as in my mind, as I see, they've got it figured out, is they allow themselves to split that passion into two things. They create professionally and then they create personally. They say, I want to be hired to do this. So all of those people say that I admire, they say, create the work that you want to be hired for. And then they also say, allow yourself time every year to work on personal projects, to do things just because you like the craft.
Right.
And that's where people, as I've seen, find that proper mindset or that balance, because they understand I'm doing this over here for a paycheck, to put food on the table, to take care of my family. This over here is because I had an idea, and I don't care if you like it. I'm making it because I had something in my head, and I want to see it in real life or hear it, So, I mean, it's important to obviously separate that personal. But what are you looking at me for?
Keep going.
Just separate that personal offense from it, but also allow yourself somewhere in your creation and your creativity to allow yourself room to make for you, and for nobody else. So,
I mean, I think that's where you find that natural thing. Where I was saying earlier, we try to force things because we think we know either what we want or what other people want. And then we end up with something contrived where we're trying to mimic something else or trying to read people's minds as to say, this person will like it if I do it like this. Man, and that's a road that'll lead you straight to disappointment because you can't make what somebody else will like. You really have to, unless you're like the pop songwriting, song making machine, like do what you do what you like, and discover what you're really good at, and what you really like, and it's just a more natural thing.
Yeah, without limitations. I'm saying, although the market may be here right now, who's to say that? Because if you're trying to remake something that another sound of someone else, like, you're not necessarily allowing yourself to just express yourself.
right.
Like, that new sound might be you. That new pop sound might be you. So music changes all the time. Just talking about music. We went through the whole snap era where everything was snapping. Now it's like the 808 hi-hats. Like, that's like everywhere. So,
but there is a path there too. Like, when you're starting out, to have things that you look up to, people you admire, work that they create, and emulate that. But you have to allow yourself to find that voice that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Branch out from there. Learn from what you can. Like, if you could, put in the time to recreate something else that someone has made, take that as just a learning opportunity, skill. Don't let that be what you do.
Right. So, disappointment.
Yeah. Me.
I think disappointment only exists if you dwell, really. I mean, like, really, really just doing what I've been prone to do. Besides that, if you don't dwell on it, if you're really, really forward thinking, then dealing with disappointment is pretty easy because that's how you deal with it.
Yeah,
You just
move on from
you
it.
you take the punch and you move on. I can look back now and see the value in every. I'm not saying every. I can see the value in most of the disappointments that stick out in my mind. Most of the things that I'm like, oh, well, that didn't happen, or it didn't happen the way I wanted, or it didn't happen when I wanted. And you kind of see things come full circle, or you see the benefit from those things later on. And that's helped me to not dwell on those things. And something I have to constantly remind myself. I've never had a life coach, but if I had one, it would have to be somebody like Phil. It's like I can't have somebody who's like,
I mean, you have Phil in your life.
I don't know, he basically is a life coach for me. I don't know what a life coach is like, but man, maybe that's what you should look into. Just probably the first couple months would be rough because people wouldn't get it. But I've always been
He
like,
just yells at me when I come in.
he doesn't listen to
Yo!
anything. No, but I think that's like I said at the onset, man, that's a personality trait that a topic like this, everybody can take from. It's just, all right, yep. That's what happened. And I remember talking to my nephews. They're like, man, this person did this and they did that and they did that and this and then this happened. And I remember just being like, yeah. Okay, so now what?
Exactly.
That's the biggest reaction from him all night.
Exactly, bro.
So would you say then, to sum up the conversation, the best way to deal with disappointment is to just think about what's next?
Honestly, bro, the best way to deal with disappointment is, all right, now that you know that, what are you going to do about it now? Control the things that you could control, bro. You can't necessarily control what has already happened. However, what's going to happen in the next hour, next 2 hours, what's going to happen tomorrow, you can control that.
Yeah. And on top of that, the other aspect of like some not being able to control other people, what you can control that can help there is your mindset about how people, and this is kind of like you were talking earlier about not expecting people that they're going to be disappointing, but just not expecting so much from them. Like if you go into a situation, control your mindset and your actions, and it in a way it takes care of both sides of it.
Shit.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed our conversation on dealing with disappointment. As Phil would say, just get over it. No, but again, if you haven't checked out episode 1 and 2, I'm not looking at who cares about the camera?
People are going to be
just here. The camera's just here, like that guy.
People are going to be wondering, like, what is he like cross-eyed or something? Because
I'm an audio guy, so I'm just looking at the meters bouncing. And then Phil earlier laughed, and it peaked, and that red
all the way at the right.
It is driving. I've just wanted to walk over there. Literally, the past hour and a half, I just wanted to walk over there and just reset that. But yeah, if you haven't listened to episode 1, What is the Miserable Company? You might want to check that out. Episode 2, 1.5, kind of a little mini-sode. How to listen to this podcast. That would help when you're listening and you're like, what is this podcast about? It's basically about whatever we're talking about in that moment. Episode 3 was incredible, with Phil telling his story and us talking about what is success.
Which we need more of that story at some point.
Yeah.
I never knew that stuff.
Really?
I've known you for a long time.
You know what we need to do?
No, we don't need to do that.
You know what I'm about to say? What am I about to say?
It's going to be bad, whatever it is.
I was going to say we need to bring his mom in here. But she's got to bring some food.
That'll be easy.
Chicken.
Oh, I need that. All right. Really appreciate you guys listening. Love you guys.
Dope.
Follow us on Instagram. Apparently,
yes,
I said
indeed.
Facebook every time.
Every time.
It just shows my age. I'm an old guy. Get on Instagram and Facebook and whatever
YouTube.
else we're on. And our handle is at The Miserable CO. Right?
Yep.
Yep. That's it.
Yep.
We'll see y'all next time. Episode 5 coming soon.
Real soon.
Episode 5, where Jeremy stares at the audio track the whole time.
Peace. I would say when we were releasing podcasts, but we don't even know at this point. Do we know how to release a podcast? We'll see you next time, episode 5.